Welcome, listeners, to this Speaking from Our Hearts podcast episode. Slow down, Paul, slow down. And today I'm joined by a lady from France called Patricia Brooks. Blimey, my tongue is in a mess this morning. Let me take a sip of water to calm things down a bit here. Okay. So today, Patricia, first of all, Patricia, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And today we're going to be talking about, a number of things, I believe, Patricia, amongst No Regrets. You've got a new book coming out called Live a Bold Life, and also a podcast called Discovering Courage. So we've got one or two bits and pieces to start us off with. So do you want to just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, I feel like I have grown bold. And that is kind of interesting for me because I felt that I had been a shy, introverted person. I was a homebody. I never wanted to, I was homesick when I went away to college. I never wanted to travel to Europe. And here now I'm living in France. And so that is my journey into discovering my courage and my boldness. And it really came out of, after my father died, I realized that I was just going through the motions in life. I had a good life, I had a good job, in a very nice house, but I was just unhappy. I was miserable. And after my father died, who, when he died, I realized that he was the strongest man I knew. He was my superhero. And that if my superhero could die, then I would die. And did I want to die just living the life that I'd been living? And so the answer was no. And so I started doing things differently. I started showing up differently. I showed up giving 100% to everything I did, including that job that I hated. And things started to turn around for me. Things started to flow for me. And it was then that things started to change in my life. I went on to go on to coach training and did a lot of inner work on myself. And my first or second trip to France, actually, I was traveling alone, and I asked myself the question, how, Patricia, are you traveling all by yourself to a foreign-speaking country? How is this possible? And I heard the answer loudly and clearly, and that was, you are growing bold. And I was lying down in bed at that moment, and I sat bolt upright. I wrote that down, and I said, that is the title of my first book. And so, here I am, living a life that really kind of surprises me, but I'm so happy that I took this journey.
Wow. Interesting when you speak about the dying aspect, Patricia. Robbins that quotes, by definition, if we're not growing, we're dying. And isn't it true that most of us have that concept of death is when we leave this physical body? We look at it as we're born, life starts, we die, life stops. And it's that very kind of black and white perception of what we know as life, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point that if we're not growing, we're dying. I got to a point where I felt that dying inside, and it didn't feel good. It was enough to make me make some changes, make me do the tough internal work, the inner work that's so hard to do when you look at the things you've done and what you've and the things that are uncomfortable to look at. That's hard. But when you're faced with dying inside, I had no alternative.
Yeah. It's as I say, it's very interesting to have that concept and that insight and go on that journey. And just to bring in your point there, Patricia, about that stark realization of what I call look in the mirror moments. Wow, is this what I've become? Is this who I am now?
Yes.
Okay. But I think better, Patricia, the stark action to take on the realization that, yes, this is, where I've come in my life, rather than that slow drip, 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 the Chinese torture of that slow death. Sharp shock treatment of that realization, wow, I need to wake up here and do something, is better, I believe, than that, as I say, dying slowly.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that people face when they may feel like something's not right, that there's got to be more to life than what they're living. I think the problem that a lot of people face is they're afraid of the change that it will take to discover what life is really about. And so that's what I do. You know, it's my mission really to help as many people as possible to work through their fears so that they can do and experience the things that has most meaning for them, so that they don't get to the end of their life feeling regret or wonder what would have been or what could have been if only I had.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is, I think that is a question of courage, really, as you say, Patricia, isn't it? So I think that leads us nicely into your podcast, which I believe is called Discovering Courage.
Yes.
For the benefit of the listeners, do you want to share, I mean, not necessarily names or details, but some of the kind of key conversations you've had, because the podcasting medium is phenomenally powerful, and we get such rich insights and learning from conversations with other people. I mean, that's the essence of speaking from our hearts, really.
Yeah.
Just want to share one or two of those courageous insights, Patricia.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you ask me that, you know, one pops to my mind because I actually dedicated this book that's coming out on June 18th to him. His name was John Hunt, and he, you know, lived a very powerful, purpose-filled life. I interviewed him the end of June last year, and he had earned he's blind. He was blind. He lost his sight after an accident. He was in the military. And he earned his black belt in karate 6 months earlier. And he was getting ready to ride the entire East Coast of the United States from Maine to Florida on bicycle, tandem bicycle, in August. And so I interviewed him at the end of June. And he had gone down the path of feeling like a victim of his circumstances, having been blinded and had several bad car accidents. But he got to this point where he felt like he was dying inside, and he had to do something different. And so he got off all of the antidepressants he was on, and he took back control of his life. And this episode was so powerful to me because I always start off by asking, what do you think is most important for listeners to know about you? And he said that I really enjoy helping people. And the last question I asked him was to share, you know, is always, what do you want to leave listeners with? And he says, just enjoy life. And so I had interviewed him at the end of June. His episode was airing the third week in July. And I called him that week to get a little bit of additional information for his bio, because I told him I would write it for him. And I asked him if he had a couple of minutes to talk to me so I could get that information. He's like, oh, no, not really. I'm in a charity ride on the West Coast of the United States. And so we're just taking a break, so I don't really have time. I said, well, what about tomorrow? Oh, no, we're continuing this charity bike ride. I said, what about the day after? He's like, no. I said, okay, let me ask you these couple of quick questions so I can get this information. So that was Sunday. On Tuesday, I started promoting the episode on Facebook, saying, you've got to listen to this one. It's one you won't believe. And by Tuesday afternoon, our karate instructor was telling me that he had died. He had a fatal heart attack while riding in that charity ride, and he had died. And so I was announcing his death on Facebook, and I couldn't believe it because he had said what people need to know about him is that he loves helping people. He was riding in this charity race, helping people, and he was doing exactly what he loved doing, this physical challenge. And he was enjoying his life. And the last words that he had said on my podcast were just enjoy life. And so for me, that podcast changed me completely. And I know that the listeners of that podcast have been astounded by it as well.
Wow. Interesting word there. Everything always lights up in me when I hear this word, Patricia, purpose. What would you say your purpose is?
I believe it is to really help people gain clarity on what it is that they don't want to have regrets about, and help them work through their fears, create a plan so that they can experience their purpose and feel how good it feels to be in that space where you can't even imagine what it feels like. It's unreal to get people to that place, get people to that place where I am now, where I'm feeling like, am I dreaming? This feels really good. I don't know what's next, but you know what? I'm trusting in the universe that it will be good. Yeah, so I think that's my purpose.
Trust, faith. And within that, Patricia, so yeah, I mean, just listening to you there, my mind's kind of all over the place, as I say, trust, faith, and it brings in so many things, doesn't it? Let me ask you this question, and I want to try, if you'll allow me to play devil's advocate. And as podcast hosts, as you know, we shouldn't be asking closed questions, should we? Apparently,
no.
According to the
no.
podcast, do not ask closed questions. Yeah, okay, but I want to ask you a closed question. And there's a little bit of method in my madness, so just bear with me. And it's this, because we can expand on it in a more open way later. But the closed question, Patricia, is this: do you believe that life is a very simple game?
Yes, and
I knew it would be a yes, but, or maybe. I knew it. Great. Fantastic.
Yes, and you know, one of the values that I hold dear, one of the ideas that I hold dear, is that I don't believe that life is meant to be a struggle. And when I say struggle, that's effort laced with negative emotion. I got to do this, and it's such a grind, and
yeah.
I don't believe that. And so that's the reason I say yes to your question. However, we do things to make the game not so simple, to make life a struggle. And I think that's our journey in life, is to get to that place where we recognize that when we rely on our intuition, when we rely on that source of faith that we have, and know that things will be okay, that things flow, and life is a simple game, and there is much less struggle. And when you get to that place, it's just so freeing.
Isn't it true, Patricia, that we as people, we're just energy, aren't we?
Yes.
We're just energy, and energy by definition cannot be destroyed. It can change its state, but it can't be destroyed. And I think it's just some basic insights about communicating this message to the outside world around, okay, we have a physical form at the moment called a body. We have something called a mind, and we have our perceptions, which our five senses. But they're transient. They come and go. And obviously, as we alluded to, Patricia, at the top of this conversation around, how things move on, and this dying thing. We're born, we die, and there's this whole kind of space in between where we, life's a struggle. Why is it always me in this? And I think one of the things that I've come to know along my own journey is this understanding that as energy, as particles that's revolving around, so transient within this universe, that's it. And we get so wrapped up in our own self-importance that it's me versus the world. Well, you are the world. You are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just that subtle understanding that actually, and I think certainly the phrase in the UK is just get over yourself.
Yeah.
Because in the grand scheme of things, you're not nowhere near as critical in this world as you think you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
The contradiction on that is we're totally unique and we are massively significant. And so there's this duality as well, isn't there? This, day, night, short, long, this whole kind of duality that exists within our world. So I think that's a very interesting insight for me to share, Patricia, that we are immensely significant, but let's put that significance in context of this grand cosmos. And it's not just about Earth, it's about the whole energetic cosmos, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we look who we are within that grand scheme and the way nature unfolds, and the whole process of just let it be, let it breathe, because let it flow, because it's going to anyway, whether you like it or not. Let's introduce that word ego, because I think we've done well to get sort of 10-15 minutes in without mentioning the E word. But a nice introduction here, Patricia. But this ego does step in, doesn't it, and starts to dominate and want control, and I want to make sense of my world. Well, actually, it's not your world.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about, everything's energy, we're energy, and how the other big point you made was that we aren't as significant as we think we are, but we're really significant.
Yeah.
And I think, you bring in ego as well. I think when we have the self-importance and we are only looking out for ourselves, or we only can see how things impact or affect us, then that's when we have a lot of fear, when we are trying to protect ourselves, when we are not part of this universe, and the oneness of the universe. But as we expand and grow, and I think that my moving out of the United States was a huge learning for me, because that helped me to open myself up to recognize how, I would say, small I was, but that, America isn't the only thing. But while I was living there, oh yes, it's the center of the world, right? But I move here and I meet so many new and different people, and I recognize that I am not as important as I thought I was. And in doing that, I am able to see that and also begin to start helping more and more people, recognizing how when I get out of my own way, when I get over myself, that my purpose in life have greater meaning.
I think we get to a stage, Patricia, do we not, where we actually realize that, hitherto I've been a legend in my own goldfish bowl.
Yeah.
We swim round in this water of self-importance, and that's it, isn't it? But the reality is, well, actually, that's a small goldfish bowl, a bit like probably this glass. But beyond that is actually, there's a swimming pool out there, and then there's a river, and then there's an ocean. And you know what? There's just this whole expanse of energy. And I think, as I say, when you put it in that context, it opens your eyes a bit.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think my transformation from that shy, introverted person who was just going through the motions, part of that transformation was around getting out of my own head and my own self-importance, and experiencing different things and new things, and actually being grateful for what I had, because I'd been jumping from one job to the next job, looking for this happiness, yet didn't see all that I had to be grateful for. And by looking at other people and what they don't have, helped me to also move, away from ego, and into this higher self where, I could find my purpose, and I could move through my fears and do things that now help many other people.
Mm. On that, yeah, I mean, we'll kind of just temporarily, if we can, Patricia, park the ego thing, because there's great mileage and conversation in that. So let's just park that one temporarily. But I want to come back and sort of focus on this duality theme that exists in all our lives. And I want to set the scene with that by, if I may, using my own platform of my past experiences, which were very stark, very challenging, very dark. You know, I'm talking about addiction, I'm talking about violence, I'm talking about suicide attempts, I'm talking about labels such as depression, etc., etc., etc. So I certainly come from what I term the coal face of life, the real sort of part of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I just introduced that sort of concept or that idea or that experience, that story, call it what you will, Patricia, because it's not important. I'm not attached to any of that. But I use that to sort of say, okay, in this duality that we speak about, the opposite of that is, and it leads me nicely into my next question, what signs do we look for from the universe to say that, and I will say she, and I do get challenged on giving the universe a gender, but that's my ownership, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation another time, another place, with whoever. But when she gives us signs to say, yeah, you're on the right path. Well, what's your thoughts around these signs? And I've got one or two more sort of dig a bit deeper on that, but I'm interested in your views on that, Patricia.
I definitely, there are signs. I agree with that. And I think everybody gets them. I think that the challenge is that we are so busy, in this life, in this physical body, in this rat race, trying to get more and more and more, and do more, and show up more on Facebook, that we can't hear it, we can't feel it, we can't sense it. And when we do hear it, because it is shouting at us, because it's like, okay, I gave you a small signal and a smaller one and a smaller one. And sometimes the signals are not necessarily happy ones, right? There are things that shake us into recognizing I have to change something. But we can't hear or feel them, because we're so busy doing and going. Now, so for me, I absolutely believe in these signals, and for me, I call it intuition. And I am living in France, in the town that I'm living in, based on a hit of intuition. I knew in 2016, I knew I wanted to move to France, but I didn't know where. And I'd read in a guidebook about this town called Perpignan. It's in the south west of France. And Salvador Dali called it the center of the universe. And I'm like, oh, the train station there, the center of the universe. And I said, I want to go check out this place. So I was in Toulouse. I took a 2-hour train ride to Perpignan to check it out. And it was a gray, drab day. It was chilly in May. And I got out of the train station, which is just a regular old train station, nothing special about it. And I started walking down this palm tree lined street. And I had this overwhelming sense of freedom. I was just like, ah. And the image that popped into my mind was a really strange one. The movie, The Silence of the Lambs? Mm. Okay, so it's the scene where Hannibal Lecter has escaped. And he has called Jodie Foster, Agent Starling, to tell her that, he's not going to call on her. The world's just more beautiful with you in it. And he hangs up the phone and he walks off into the distance. He's wearing this straw hat, it's a tropical place he's at. And I thought to myself, as I'm feeling this overwhelming sense of freedom, I thought to myself, how I'm feeling, this is how Hannibal had to feel. And in that instant, I knew this is where I needed to be. So that was a signal that I could not ignore. It made no sense. There are not a lot of jobs here. What was I going to do? But I knew that I had to get back there. And so, yes, signals from the universe are really important. We can't hear them. sometimes, but sometimes they scream at us.
And the reason I painted that contrasting duality scenario, Patricia, is this, and this was this morning, and the date, for the purpose of this podcast is kind of irrelevant, but it was literally a couple of hours before this conversation. As I went out to put some rubbish outside, on the table was a white feather.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is, I think it's about raising awareness for what are these little signs. And angel numbers, when I look at the clock and it's 11:11,
yes.
Little things like that. And when I go back to my previous, as I do when I go back to the UK, to my previous, where I was born and bred, and I talk to the guys and girls about this, they think I'm absolutely crackers and I've lost my mind. They think I've been smoking some of those, what they call funny folks with that marijuana in and all that kind of stuff. But
well, I don't.
No, but that's why I sort of took a couple of minutes, Patricia, to paint that reality of the foundation, to say, look, I'm not some guy that's come from Mars that does smoke the funny fags and I'm away with the theories. This is hard-nosed reality.
Absolutely. And it's reality that, as I said, that many of us can't see because we're so blinded by, ego, our life, or whatever's going on at that moment. But you seeing that white feather, that meant something to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. Absolutely. So let's get focused on our friend, the ego. How would you describe ego, Patricia? What does that mean to you, that word?
Ego. Well, I would say that ego is that part of us that is, it's about self-protection, it's about winning, it's about even lack of compassion for others, right? I think it's all about focused on me. Yeah. How can I, stay safe? How can I be happy? What are the things that I can do to protect myself and sustain myself? So that's how I would define it. And I think it's not necessarily always a bad thing. It's when we neglect other people, when we think that we are all that is important, when we don't recognize that we are part of this bigger universe, that it really is a problem.
Yeah, I think it needs to know its place as a player on the playing field of awareness.
Yes.
It's a part of awareness, and so long as we've got that overview, and that, I think for me, that brings in the higher self to be able to essentially look down, because I class my ego and my mind, and I know there's a subtle difference, there's a big difference, but I class them as my best friend, because they're a part of me, but they're not me. Tail and dog. So in the context of that metaphor, tail does not wag dog. Dog wags tail. And so the higher self, which is me, the dog, I wag my ego. Or on the few instances when it's starting to be the other way around, because I'm a human being, I think because of my awareness, I've learned to catch it. And it is that awareness, isn't it, Patricia?
Yes, and I love that analogy. When it's the opposite way around and that tail starts, wagging me, I have that awareness to say, well, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Interesting. I like something that you said about 5 minutes or so ago about sort of showing up on Facebook, or words to that effect. Yes. And I just throw this out there. I've got no sort of attachment to it other than to just throw it out there and see what your thoughts are. But when Wayne Dyer quotes the Tao Te Ching, and there's this one of the 81 verses, I can't remember which one it is, Patricia, but it's something along the lines that those that know do not speak. And I kind of just throw that in there because maybe I'm being a bit too subjective, but this social media thing and Facebook and all this, it's kind of expected these days, isn't it? That, you know, that people are going to be on there and with their thoughts, their quotes, and, you know, and I understand that to a certain level. But when I hear Wayne Dyer's, and I love Wayne Dyer personally, I think his material is yeah. But when I hear that, and I think, okay, Paul, and I actually know intuitively that that's another level of the higher self that I certainly aspire to be at. So it just brings in this whole duality yet again of, okay, be still, be quiet, words are not needed, and then I rush off and post on Facebook.
Well, and the thing is, you know, I think that's a great. You know, we talk about the tail wagging of the dog, and you know, it feels like to me, Facebook, you know, it has its benefits, but it has its downfall. And, you know, for me, I know that when I'm, you know, in the midst of a marketing campaign and I'm posting a whole lot, I can feel that pull of ego, right? Because I start looking to the likes and I'm like, and that starts to change my mood. And so it's really, you know, this duality, as you say, yeah, there's the benefit to it. And people think some of the things I share can help people. But on the other side, if I get too attached to the likes, then I can spiral down and it's not good.
When we talk about the ego, Patricia, is it not to say, you know, I mean, I've kind of already shared that from a higher perspective, my best friend, my tail, if you will, to use, you know, continue that metaphor, is the mind. And obviously part of the mind is the ego. But isn't it fair to say that, and this is going back to that question earlier on about, is life a very simple game? Is it or isn't it a question and a simple choice of love versus fear? Or am I oversimplifying it?
It's a simple choice of love versus fear, but it's not so simple to get to that understanding, that realization that it's that black and white, and or even to know that someone has it, that they feel they have a choice, right? Someone who feels like they need to protect themselves and they need to get, and they have that fear, they a lot of times don't know that they have the choice of love, and that love is the answer, that love will solve the problems that they're facing. So yes, it's a simple question of or choice of love versus fear, but it's not so simple in knowing that you have that choice, and that it's that black and white.
But isn't that the role and the responsibility of practitioners like ourselves, Patricia, to get that message out there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
And to contradict the eminent Dr. Wayne Dyer, are we maybe not shout, you know, are we being too silent? Maybe we need to shout louder, because my understanding is that this world at this moment in time is crying out for change. It is absolutely desperate for change, more than I can ever recollect. Now, maybe that's because my sensitivity and my own awareness is being heightened dramatically as time goes on, because I'm seeing things, I'm noticing white feathers, I'm noticing that the clock says 11:11 or 22:22 or whatever it might be, 08.08, you know, all these signs, and there are many. So maybe it's me that's changing, and undoubtedly it is me that's changing, but I know from the countless conversations I have with people, Patricia, that the world is definitely changing as well. Definitely.
Absolutely, it is. And I think, do we need to shout a little bit louder? I don't know. You know, I think that when people are ready for us, they will hear us. And I don't know that we'll need to shout. I think definitely I hear what you're saying about being, you know, seeing that, being more sensitive as you've grown, because I feel that too. And it feels a lot of things that are going on, especially in the United States, don't feel good. It's like, what is going on? It feels like we're kind of going back in time. And yet I feel like we're doing what we can do. And that, do we need to shout a little bit louder? I'm not so sure.
Okay, so I consider myself challenged, and I'll revert back to yet again Dr. Dyer's stance that quietness. So if we're not going to speak with our words, maybe we need to speak with our actions, and maybe
Yes.
that energy that we emit through being in somebody's presence and not speaking, but just a simple arm around the shoulder, just a simple eye contact, whatever that energy, that affirmation is to that person, to say, actually, I'm with you, I hear you.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, absolutely to that, because people might not be ready for what we have to share with them, but they can definitely gain something from that touch or that energy, that they feel they're not alone. So yes.
Tell us a bit about Live a Bold Life in terms of the book, Patricia. Tell us, that's coming out on June the 18th.
Right.
Give us an insight. Give us a sneak, without giving too much away. Give us a little teaser.
Okay. Well, so I wrote my first book, as I said, after I got the book title when I was in France in 2016. And so that was all about how I was able to grow bold. Well, Live a Bold Life, your 30-day mission to a fearless future, is 30 stories of my first year in France and the insights I gained. And they're, just daily occurrences, nothing spectacular, but in those happenings, at 4:00 in the morning is when I usually wake up and start writing, and I have those insights and I were connecting dots. I'm like, oh, this happened. And I'm like, oh, this means this. And so I would write these stories down. So it's 30 of those. And at the end of them, I have questions that the reader answers so that they can then fill in the intuitive affirmation that I have. It's a template with a couple of words missing, so that they can create their own intuitive affirmation. Because one of the ways that I was able to grow bold was by listening to and writing out and reciting my own affirmations. And so when I say intuitive affirmations, it's really the affirmations that come from that higher self that knows where you're blocked, that knows where your limiting beliefs are, so that you can write those words in that are most meaningful and powerful to you, so that you can, have that fearless future. So I'm really excited about it because, as I've been editing and working through it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is really powerful. And each time I read it, I think I can't wait for readers to get their hands on it so that they can have this transformation as well.
Brilliant. One of the things that we spoke around earlier, Patricia, two simple words, but immensely powerful: no regrets. Give us an insight into your world of no regrets.
I think, I was wondering why that has struck a chord with me, because, people have purposes and missions that are very different. And for me, why is, helping people work through their fears so they don't have any regrets? Why is that so important to me? And I really think it's just looking at my parents and how they lived. They had good lives. They were college educated, the first in their families to be college educated. They were professionals. They lived a good life. Yet, I look at pictures of my mom, and she never was smiling broadly. She'd have a smile on her face, but underneath that, I saw sadness. And, when my father was dying in those final weeks, I also saw a sadness or disappointment or regret that he had not been more honest with his family, and that he would not have the opportunity to show how much he was sorry for that and how much he truly cared for us. And so I think those, the deaths of my parents and the disappointment or the regrets that I sensed that they had really got to my core. And so I think that that's why it's so important to me to help others not have regrets. In terms of regrets that I have, I don't know. I think there are things that I look at life now as perfect. Things that I didn't want to happen, that happened. Some of them, not necessarily all of them right now. I look back and I'm like, oh, now I see why that happened. That had to happen so that this could happen, so that this could happen. And while I was going through it, it was pure hell. And I was cursing God. But, in hindsight, I see. And so my life as it's played out, even some of the things that maybe I'm not happy with still, I don't feel that those I will regret those. It's the things that now I feel compelled to do or I truly want to do. And that if I don't do it, if I don't work through that fear to do it, then that's when I would have a regret. And that's not what I want.
So on that no regrets theme, I think that nicely dovetails in towards bringing things towards a finale in terms of this podcast conversation, Patricia. So my question to you on that is, what would be your epitaph? What would be your legacy? What was it all, to quote a well-known song from the 60s, 70s, what's it all about, Alfie? Or in this case, what's it all about, Patricia?
Wow. Okay. This is the question. I get it.
It's not. Actually, no, it's not.
This isn't? Oh, no.
This is just a nice warm-up, a gentle warm-up.
Gentle? All right. What would my epitaph say? Here lies Patricia Brooks, who started out reserved, shy, uncertain, and died living a bold life.
Wow, very concise, very powerful. Okay, so that does now lead us into what you've just referred to as the question. And just as we flirted earlier on, Patricia, with this closed scenario, kind of, metaphorically tying you in a corner, I want to do the same again, and there's a reason for that, so please bear with me. But I want you in no more than 2 minutes, between 1 and 2 minutes, to think about and answer this question. What does speaking from your heart mean to you?
Speaking from my heart means to me that I am sharing and being vulnerable, and in sharing and being vulnerable, I'm helping others to gain answers about themselves and their lives and how they can play the game of life more simplistically. In speaking from my heart, it's a two-way conversation, because when I'm speaking from my heart, I feel good, but I also receive that the person I'm speaking to feels good as well, that they may not have come into the conversation feeling good, but when they leave it, they are changed. Their heart is more open. They are more loving.
Superb, absolutely superb. Thanks for that, Patricia. Okay, so we've been on, I think it's fair to say, we've been on a bit of a journey here. We've kind of gone from metaphoric north, south, east, and west. We've been all over the place, but hopefully listeners will think that there's been some kind of continuity to it. So if people want to reach out, Patricia, to you and find out more about your book, your life, the work you do, where can people get in contact with you?
Well, they can email me at patricia@thecouragecatalyst.com. they can go to my website, www.thecouragecatalyst.com, or for more book information, they can go to www.30daysfearlessfuture.com. That's 30daysfearlessfuture.com.
Superb. Patricia, I'd like to thank you for for being part of this interesting and often humorous conversation. Sincere gratitude. It's been an absolute pleasure to be part of that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for your deep and thoughtful questions.
Yeah, and so there we have it, listeners. Hope you've enjoyed that as much as myself and Patricia have. And I just want, as I always do at the end, I want to leave you with this thought that remember, whatever you're doing in life, always walk your path with heart.